Now picture this, at the age of 29 years, he is invited to the United States of America to address a historic civil rights movement rally together with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In his mid-20s, he is elected the spokesperson for the African continent at the International Confederation for Free Trade. He is the world's most celebrated labor leader from Africa, even before Kenya attains her independence. So who was he? What was his vision and vision? The inimitable Tom Mboya. This is his untold story. My name is Duncan Haimba. Born on August 15, 1930, Tom Joseph Mboya rose from a humble background to become an enigmatic, colossal, and inimitable labor unionist and political leader whose short stint in the political arena continues to mesmerize many to date. Just who was Tom Mboya? Tom Mboya is said to have been a politician well ahead of his time, one who had great intellect and an orator par excellence.
Always stated that our independence cannot be complete if in fact there is any part of the world where the black man is not accorded his rightful position in.
He was a trade unionist who gained international recognition way before he plunged into the murky waters of politics.
First and foremost, I must tell you that Tom Mboya is the most world celebrated labor leader from Africa. Tom was a genius because in his 20s, he was speaking for Africa at the International Confederation of Free Trade Unions. He moved from there on elective position representing the whole continent. I've been the vice president of that organization, but Tom was specifically a spokesperson for Africa during those days. And from there, I think at the age of 25, he went to Ruskin College. He was in the trade union movement, mark you. He went at Ruskin College, Oxford, to do his course in labor relations and management of trade unions, including an access to economics. He was an economist of very high caliber.
Tom Mboya institutionalized the labor movement not only here in Kenya, but across the continent, and rose to become the first African to sit on the International Confederation of Free Trade Union Board. Even before most African countries gained independence, Mboya had already become a household name on the international arena. 1959 was arguably the year that marked the watershed period of Mboya's life. It was the year that revealed to the world just who Tom Mboya was. In April that year, the trade unionist visited Washington, D.C. at the invitation of the American Committee on Africa. It is during the visit that he secured scholarships for East African students to study in various universities, courtesy of the African American Students Foundation. He successfully raised funds to support students from East Africa. At the time, there was no single university in Kenya. He used his connections to organize the famous Airlift Africa project. About 800 students from East Africa were awarded scholarships between 1959 and 1963. The first airlift had 81 students, among them the late Barack Obama Sr., father to former US President Barack Obama. The late Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Wangari Maathai was also among the beneficiaries. It was called the famous Flight of 81.
It was 1959 when I learned that there was a program between Honorable Mboya and the Kennedy of the United States of America. I didn't know what to do when I was taking my studies. I inquired the program. I was told it's an arrangement between Honorable Mboya, late Mboya, with President Kennedy, that children or students who did not have an opportunity to continue with their education here in Kenya can apply from American colleges and universities. And when they are admitted, the Kennedy's family will airlift the students to America. It so happened that I had just finished my London matriculation examination, of which I was accepted by the same program to go to America.
Reverend Daniel Mbai was among the lucky 81.
The program was so successful that it didn't gain the endorsements of singer Harry Belafonte, baseball great Jackie Robinson, and actor Sidney Poitier, who lent their names on a letter asking Americans to donate money to help Africans to secure travel to America. This program was called Airlift America in 1959. In 1959, they brought, separately from the 81 original students, there was a young man who came to school in Hawaii, and his name was Barack Obama Sr. On April the 11th, 1959, Tom and Mboya not only marched with Dr. King, Tom and Mboya spoke at a Dr. King rally. And on May 13th, 1959, the SCLC and Dr. Martin Luther King sponsored Tom and Mboya an African Freedom Dinner. Also in 1959, Tom and Mboya was so popular in America that Howard University awarded him an honorary doctorate degree.
But it was in April same year, 1959, when the trade unionist perhaps surprised the country, the continent, and maybe Americans as well, when he was invited to address a historic civil rights movement rally together with Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington, D.C., the seat of power of the free world.
Than the eradication of poverty, disease, and ignorance. And in this context, you and ourselves are all engaged in the same struggle that can aptly be summarized in terms of a struggle for political freedom, for economic opportunities, and for human dignity. This is my message to you. And I and millions of other people join you today in solidarity for the success of the struggle in which we are all involved.
His 1959 exploits would spill over to 1960 when he joined the then Massachusetts Senator John Fitzgerald Kennedy's presidential campaign, popularly known as John F. Kennedy. It is said his involvement in the civil rights movement rally a year earlier was crucial in the U.S. presidential election that year. J.F. Kennedy's resolution to support the airlift project was a major issue in that election and possibly a factor in his victory, given the vote from the African Americans. This is said to have been on the 26th July 1960, when Tom Mboya met Democratic presidential nominee Senator John F. Kennedy, becoming arguably the most significant African to influence American history, culture, and politics.
John F. Kennedy agreed in July of 1960 that since they could not find sponsorship, he did not want to let these scholarships go to waste.
After successfully sending the first batch of students to the US in 1959, the legendary trade unionist associates had to reach out to then US Vice President Richard Nixon for more help. But the question many asked and continue to wonder about is his connection to Martin Luther King Jr. How did they meet?
Martin Luther King sponsored Tom and Mboya an African Freedom Dinner. Also in 1959, Tom and Mboya was so popular in America that Howard University awarded him an honorary doctorate degree. Tom and Mboya was a part of the American Civil Rights Movement, and the American Civil Rights Movement was a part of Africa.
His presence on the international scene had been felt, his great oratory skills had. With that, he also found himself at the forefront in pitching for his own country, Kenya, to be granted independence from British colonial rule at the Legislative Council in Lancaster, 1960. By the time Kenya was gaining her independence on December 12, 1963, and becoming a republic 12 months later, Tom Mboya was already a household name. It is reported that it is Tom Mboya who planned the design of the Kenyan flag, as well as the first ever master plan for the city of Nairobi. He was Kenya's first minister in charge of economic planning and development, and while in charge, he crafted the crucial sessional paper number 10 on Harambee and principles of African socialism, a paper that was adopted by Parliament in 1964 and provided a model of government based on African values.
Expression cannot just be defined in one word because it represents a lot of things. It represents, for example, our belief that in Africa, the kind of economic, social, and political institutions that make sense must find their meaning in the African setup. That any new organization which we bring up must be based on some traditional concept to life. It must not just be imported from outside. For example, we are clan-minded, we are tribal-minded, in that we are communal in our concept of life. Now, it is necessary that our new institutions are based on this approach, what we have called in our definition of African socialism, mutual social responsibility. That is, that a person is not just an individual, he is part of a system, he is part of a community. He has responsibilities within that community.
It is reported that it is Tom Mboya who planned the design of the Kenyan flag, as well as the first ever master plan for the city of Nairobi. He was Kenya's first minister in charge of economic planning and development, and while in charge, he crafted the crucial sessional paper number 10 on Harambee and principles of African socialism, a paper that was adopted by Parliament in 1964 and provided a model of government based on African values.
But in turn, the community has also got responsibility to him. They have duties towards him and his children. This is a very important concept. The other concept is that every person has got equal value and worth. Although some of our people in traditional life had a lot of wealth, but their wealth was not really belonging to them as individuals. They held it almost in trust for the rest of the community. And when any of the members of the community got into trouble, or when he wanted cows to pay dowry, he always looked to this as a possession which he could also have access to. So that there is this element of acknowledging individuals as equal humans in the community.
These video clips paint a picture of a man who had the interests of Africa at heart. Mboya, the Pan-Africanist. This is the Solidarity Building in Gikomba, the headquarters for the giant central organization of trade unions KOTU, which was constructed courtesy of Mboya's mobilization skills. However, as fate would have it, Mboya was murdered in cold blood on a cold Saturday of July 5th, 1969. He was assassinated on Government Road, now named Moi Avenue, in broad daylight as he was leaving a pharmacy by the name Chani. His fatal shooting threw the country into a panic mode. Medics at the Nairobi hospital raced against time to try and save his life, efforts that were all in vain. The veteran trade unionist come politician succumbed. Trade unionist Shem Oluoch was a personal friend to the late Mboya.
In his speech and in his mind, he wanted complete freedom for the black man. And I think some people felt that when Kenyatta goes, he would be the next president.
Had already gone back to his lands, and then immediately the 2 o'clock bulletin news on the KBC tells us Tom has been assassinated. People are sick, and particularly people from Western Kenya. They caused havoc more even than people from Nyanza. Fought along. One of them who led the fight against the police was called Mwinami from Western. He was arrested because of causing that problem. And in that year, the first member of parliament for Lurambi South, the late Brown Tsuma, moved a motion in parliament for the government to tell the whole world why was Tom Mboya killed. So you can see it really hit the Western Kenya more than any other community. And Mboya had friends in every area of Kenya. So that is why it is not only in the trade union movement, but also on the political scene. Some of us up to today, what we are doing, we are just trying to follow the footsteps of the late Tom Mboya and seriously and keenly reading his works. And that is what has helped some of us to propel us to higher positions in labor movement globally. Because Mboya was an authority on issues of global international relations practice. So he did a commendable job, and I think if Tom would have died, he would have been now a retired president for the entire continent of Africa. He was a bright, brilliant, and he married also a very brilliant wife, Pamela. Pamela was good, was motherly, friendly, and Pamela, there was no another person that would have assisted Tom more than Pamela. When I took over KOTU, Pamela came to me and she said she has a feeling I will do work as better than any other trade union leader in Kenya she has ever seen. And she came with a portrait, the portrait that the family loved, the portrait that resembled the really Tom Mboya, and the portrait Mboya himself had loved it. She brought it to me, and she also told me that I want to show you in the office where Tom was sitting. That office had been designated to our chairman, but she said, no, this is not chairman's office, this was where Tom was sitting, and I want you to sit here.
His assassination remains a mystery for a man of sharp intellect, a man who is said to have had the ear of founding father President Jomo Kenyatta. Political tension remained high throughout the mourning period, and the climax was on this day when all hell broke loose. Chaos broke out at his requiem mass in the capital Nairobi as police and Mboya supporters clashed outside the Holy Family Basilica as the mass went on. The late President Kenyatta witnessed the chaos. The country was in pain. It had lost a promising son, an icon. Coincidentally, all the four great friends were assassinated in the 60s. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963. His brother Robert Kennedy was fatally shot on June 5, 1968, after winning California's Democratic primary and died at the hospital while undergoing treatment. 2 months earlier, on April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot in Memphis, Tennessee, and also died in hospital. Then, a year later, on Saturday, July 1969, Kenya's Tom Mboya was also assassinated at the age of 39.
We lost a father. Our country suffered a much bigger loss. It lost a hero, an advocate, and a champion.
I remember that particular midday afternoon in Kitui School. Everything seemed to have come to a standstill. That was how powerful the name Tom Joseph Mboya was, right across the Kenyan nation.
We want to say that Thomas Joseph Mboya continues to live and will continue to live forever in our country.
It appreciates the need to honor Kenyans who have served our country with dedication.
In 2011, the Grand Coalition government of President Mwai Kibaki and Prime Minister Raila Odinga unveiled a Tom Mboya monument along Moi Avenue, a few meters from the spot where he was assassinated. 2019 marks 50 years after Mboya's assassination. Kenyans can only wonder what kind of leader he would have been for Kenya and indeed Africa had he lived longer.
So he did a commendable job, and I think if Tom would have died, he would have been now a retired president for the entire continent of Africa. He was a bright, brilliant, and he married also a very brilliant wife, Pamela. Pamela was good, was motherly, friendly, and Pamela, there was no another person that would have assisted Tom more than Pamela.
Duncan Hemba, KTN News.